No one dared to aid the aliens, except humans. Part 1: The Distress Signal. The stars were quiet that night. Captain Park stood alone on the bridge of the Starward Hope, watching the endless darkness through the main window. He was a man of 53 years, with gray hair at his temples and tired eyes that had seen too much of space. Behind him, the soft hum of machines filled the silence. The Starward Hope was not a warship. It was an exploration vessel, built for mapping unknown regions and making first contact with new species. For 3 months, they had traveled through empty space, finding nothing but rocks and gas clouds. The crew of 200 had grown restless. Was about to return to his quarters when the alarm sounded. Lieutenant sat up straight at her station. She was the ship's communications officer, a young woman with sharp eyes and a mind that worked faster than most computers. Her fingers moved across the controls as data filled her screen. "Captain," she said, her voice tight, "we are receiving a distress signal." Walked to her station and looked at the screen. The signal was weak, barely visible among the background noise of space. It came from a region that had no name on their maps. "Can you clean it up?" he asked. Nodded and worked for several minutes. Slowly, the static cleared and a voice emerged. It was not human. The words were in a language that did not recognize, but the tone was clear. It was the sound of fear. It was the sound of desperation. "I know this language," said quietly. "It is." The word hung in the air like poison. Every spacefaring human knew about They were a quarantined species, forbidden from contact with the rest of the galaxy. The Galactic Concord, the alliance of elder races that ruled most of known space, had placed them under something called Edict 7 3,000 years ago. No one was allowed to speak to them. No one was allowed to help them. No one was allowed to even approach their space. "What are they saying?" asked. Listened carefully, her face growing pale. "It is a colony ship, 12,000 refugees. Their life support is failing. Their engines are dead. They are asking for help." She paused. "They say they have been sending this message for 19 days. No one has answered." Felt something cold settle in his chest. 19 days. 12,000 people dying slowly in the dark, calling out to a galaxy that refused to listen. He turned to his first officer, a large man named Sergeant Juno. "How far?" Juno checked the navigation console. 14 hours at maximum speed, Captain." "And the nearest Concord station?" 6 hours from the signal's location. They would have received it long before us." So the Concord knew. They knew, and they had done nothing. Felt anger rise in his throat, but he kept his face calm. "Open a channel to Concord Command," he ordered. The connection took several minutes to establish. When it did, the face of an ambassador appeared on screen. They were an elder race, tall and thin, with blue skin and eyes that held no warmth. This one was named Ambassador. "Captain Park," said, "we have detected that you received the signal. You are hereby ordered to ignore it and continue on your assigned route." "Ambassador, there are 12,000 people dying on that ship." They are under Edict 7. Any species that renders aid to them will face immediate expulsion from the Galactic Concord. Your trade agreements will end. Your protection treaties will be void. You will stand alone." Stared at the ambassador. "Why, what did they do?" "That is not your concern. The edict stands. Do not interfere." The screen went dark. Dr. Bay had been listening from the doorway of the bridge. He was the ship's doctor, a gentle man with soft hands and a kind face. He walked to the captain's side. He said quietly, "I looked up in our historical database. Do you know why they were quarantined?" "Tell me." 3,000 years ago, they developed technology that threatened the Concord's power. Not weapons, clean energy, faster travel, things that would have made the elder races less important, so the Concord accused them of having a corrupted genome. They said they were dangerous, that contact with them would spread some kind of contamination. Shook his head. "There is no evidence of any disease. It was a lie. They were quarantined because they were a threat to power, not to health. Closed his eyes. 3,000 years. For 3,000 years, an entire species had been cast out, left to wander alone, forbidden from seeking help even when they were dying. And the galaxy had simply accepted it. Captain said, "If we help them, we lose everything. The conquered will cut us off. Earth will suffer." "I know. The other ships in range have already turned away. The traders, they all received the signal. They all ignored it." "I know." Sergeant Juno stepped forward. "Sir, what are your orders?" Looked at his crew. These were good people. They had families back on Earth. They had futures to think about. He had no right to ask them to throw everything away for strangers they had never met. But he also knew something else. He knew that if they turned away now, if they let 12,000 people die because a law told them to, they would never be able to look at themselves again. Some prices were too high to pay. He said, "Send a message to the ship, tell them help is coming." Her eyes widened. "Captain, are you sure?" "Send it." His hands trembled as she typed. When she finished, she looked up at him with something like wonder in her eyes. Turned to the helm officer. "Set a course for the distress signal, maximum speed." "Sir, the Conquered." "I heard what the Conquered said. Now hear what I am saying. We did not come to space to watch people die. We did not travel all this way to become the kind of species that turns away from suffering because it is convenient." He looked at each member of his crew in turn. "If anyone wants to object, speak now. I will not force anyone to join me in this." No one spoke. One by one they turned back to their stations. The Starward Hope changed course and jumped to faster-than-light speed, racing toward a ship full of strangers that the entire galaxy had abandoned. And in the darkness of space, for the first time in 3,000 years, they received an answer to their cries for help. Someone was coming. No one dared to aid the aliens, except humans. Part 2, First Contact. The colony ship appeared on their sensors like a wounded animal. It was massive, nearly 3 times the size of the Starward Hope, but it drifted without power, spinning slowly in the void. Scorch marks covered its hull. Entire sections had been torn open, exposing the darkness within to the cold of space. Captain Park stared at the image on the main screen. How many life signs? Lieutenant checked her readings twice before answering. Approximately 9,000, Captain. They have lost 3,000 since the distress signal began. 3,000 dead in 19 days. Felt his jaw tighten. Take us alongside. Dr. Bay, prepare your medical teams. We board in 30 minutes. The doctor nodded and hurried from the bridge. As the Starward Hope moved closer, opened a communication channel. "Vessel, this is the human ship Starward Hope. We have received your distress call. We are here to help. Please respond." For a long moment there was only silence. Then a voice came through, weak and broken, speaking in heavily accented but understandable common tongue. "Human vessel, this is Elder Oma of the Wanderer's Lament. We do not understand. You are not. Why have you come?" Took the communicator. "Because you asked for help. We are sending teams aboard now. Please lower your shields and open your airlocks." Another long silence. When Elder Oma spoke again, her voice cracked. "You know what we are. You know the edict. If you help us, your people will suffer." "We know. Open the airlocks, Elder. We are coming." The boarding was unlike anything the human crew had experienced. The ship was dark and cold. Emergency lights flickered in corridors that smelled of sickness and death. Bodies lay covered in sheets along the walls, too many to count. Dr. Bay led the first medical team. He had studied biology during the journey, learning everything he could from old records, but nothing had prepared him for what he found. They were humanoid but different. Their skin was silver gray, smooth like polished stone. Their eyes were large and dark, adapted for low light. They were beautiful in a strange, sad way, and they were dying. found Elder Oma in what remained of the ship's medical bay. She was old, her silver skin cracked and dull, her movements slow and painful. Around her, hundreds of lay on makeshift beds, some unconscious, some watching the humans with eyes full of fear. "I am Dr. Bay," he said gently, kneeling beside her. "I am here to help." Elder Oma stared at him as if he were a ghost. "In 3,000 years, no one has come. We sent signals to every species in the galaxy. The passed within sight of our ship and turned away. The traders detected our dying and increased their speed to escape faster." Tears formed in her dark eyes. "Why are you different?" Did not know how to answer. He simply opened his medical kit and began to work. Over the next several hours, human teams spread throughout the ship. Engineers worked to restore life support. Medical officers treated the sick and wounded. Supplies were transferred from the Starward Hope: food, water, medicine, oxygen. Not everyone welcomed them. A young engineer named blocked the entrance to the engine room when the human team arrived. He was tall and strong, with anger burning in his eyes. "Stop," he commanded. "I will not let you touch our ship." The lead engineer, a woman named Specialist, held up her hands peacefully. "We only want to help repair your engines." Help laughed bitterly. "No one helps. What do you want? Our technology, our resources, the location of our hidden colonies." He stepped closer, his fists clenched. "Everyone wants something. Everyone lies. Your kindness is just another trap." Looked at him with sad eyes. "I understand why you think that. After everything your people have suffered, I would not trust us either." She slowly removed her tool belt and set it on the ground. "But I am going to stay here, outside this door, until you decide to let me help. Because your people are dying and your engines are broken, and I know how to fix them." Stared at her. "You would wait for how long?" "As long as it takes." She sat down on the cold metal floor and waited. On the bridge of the Starward Hope, Captain received the communication he had been expecting. Ambassador's face appeared on screen, his blue features twisted with cold anger. "Captain Park, you have violated Edict 7. You have made contact with a quarantined species. The Galactic Concord hereby revokes all treaties with the human species. Your trade routes are closed. Your colonies will receive no protection. You are alone." Stood straight, "Then we are alone. You do not understand what you have done. The elder races have maintained order for 10,000 years. Your species is young and foolish. You will regret this choice." "Perhaps, but I will not regret saving 12,000 lives." He nodded to, who opened a broadcast channel, not just to the Conquered but to every frequency and range. Every ship, every station, every world that could receive the signal would hear what came next. "This is Captain Park of the human vessel Starward Hope, speaking to all who can hear. 19 days ago, a ship full of refugees began dying in the darkness of space. They called for help. Every species in the galaxy heard them. Every species turned away." He paused. "Except us. We are here now, aboard the ship Wanderer's Lament, providing aid to 9,000 survivors. The Galactic Concord has told us that helping the helpless is a crime. They have told us that compassion is forbidden. They have cast us out for the sin of mercy." He looked directly into the camera. "So be it. We would rather be outcasts than murderers. We would rather stand alone than kneel to cruelty. And we would rather lose everything than lose our souls." He cut the transmission. In the engine room of the ship, had watched the broadcast on a small screen. When it ended, he stared at Specialist, still sitting patiently on the floor. "Your captain," he said slowly. "He just destroyed your future for us, for people he has never met." Smiled. "That is who we are." Was silent for a long moment. Then he stepped aside and opened the engine room door. "Come, I will show you what needs to be fixed." Throughout the night, humans and worked side by side. They did not speak the same language. They did not share the same history, but they shared something more important, the simple understanding that no one should die alone in the dark. And somewhere across the galaxy, On ships and stations and worlds beyond counting, others watched and listened. They saw the humans standing against the conquered. They heard the captain's words echo through space. Most turned away, too afraid to act. But some did not. Some remembered what it felt like to have courage, and deep in their hearts something began to stir. No one dared to aid the aliens, except humans. Part 3: The Gathering Storm. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within hours of Captain's broadcast, every major species had heard the story. A human ship had the Galactic conquered. A human crew had broken Edict 7, and the Conquered's response was swift and terrible. On Earth, President Han stood in her office, watching reports flood in from across human space. She was a woman of 60 years, with silver hair cut short and eyes that had seen humanity through 2 wars and a famine. Nothing had prepared her for this. "Our trade station at Prime has been shut down," her aide reported. "They have recalled their ambassador. They have closed their borders to human ships." He paused, his voice heavy. "Our colony on New Sol reports that supply ships from conquered space have stopped coming. They have food for 3 months. After that." He did not need to finish. President Han turned to face her cabinet. "What is the military situation?" Admiral Myra stepped forward. She was the commander of Earth's Third Fleet, a tactical genius who had never lost a battle, but even she looked worried now. "The Conquered is assembling a fleet near our border," she said. 47 warships so far. They claim it is a defensive measure, but their position allows them to reach the ship in 18 hours. "And our forces?" "I have moved the Third Fleet to intercept. We have 12 ships, President, 12 against 47. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what those numbers meant. "What are their demands?" President Han asked. "They want us to withdraw from the vessel immediately. They want Captain Park arrested and delivered to conquered custody, and they want humanity to publicly apologize for violating Edict 7. Admiral's voice hardened. "If we do not comply within 48 hours, they will take corrective action." President Han walked to the window and looked out at the city below. Millions of people going about their lives, unaware that their entire future was being decided in this room. "Call a session of the Coalition Council," she said. "Every representative, every colony leader. This decision cannot be mine alone." Meanwhile, aboard the Starward Hope, Dr. Bay made a discovery that changed everything. He had been studying medical records for hours, trying to understand their biology well enough to treat the sick. But something in the old files caught his attention. He followed the trail of data through decades of conquered records, documents, and forgotten archives. What he found made him feel sick. He rushed to the bridge where Captain was coordinating repair efforts. "Captain, I need to speak with you, privately." Saw the look on his face and nodded. They stepped into a small conference room and locked the door. "I found the truth about the doctor said. "The Conquered's records from 3,000 years ago. They were never quarantined for having a corrupted genome. There is no corruption. There never was." "Then why?" Pulled up the files on a display screen. 3,000 years ago, they developed breakthrough technologies, clean energy that could power a planet forever, faster-than-light drives that made conquered ships look primitive, medical advances that could extend life by centuries. He shook his head. They offered to share everything freely. No cost, no conditions, just gifts to the galaxy. Felt cold, and the conquered. The elder races saw a threat. If they shared their technology, the Conquered's power would collapse. Their control over trade, over travel, over everything, it would end. So they created the lie. They claimed they were dangerous. They quarantined an entire species to protect their own power. For a long moment said nothing. Then he spoke quietly. 3,000 years. They have been punished for 3,000 years because they tried to help others. Yes. Straightened. Send this information to President Han. Send it to Admiral, send it to everyone. On Earth, the Coalition Council met in emergency session. Representatives from every human colony filled the great chamber, their faces grim with worry. President Han stood at the central podium and told them everything: the Concord's ultimatum, the threat of war, and the truth about why they had been quarantined. When she finished, the chamber erupted. Some demanded immediate withdrawal, arguing that humanity could not survive a war with the Concord. Others called for resistance, insisting that humanity must not become complicit in a 3,000-year crime. Finally, an old man rose from his seat. He was Representative O, the leader of the new Soul Colony, the same colony that would starve if supplies did not come. I have listened to both sides, he said slowly. I understand the fear of those who want to withdraw. War is terrible. Hunger is terrible. My own people may die because of this choice. He paused. But I also remember why my grandparents left Earth. They went to the stars because they believed humanity could be better than it was. They believed we could build something good in the darkness. He looked around the chamber. If we abandon the now, we prove them wrong. We become exactly what the Conquered wants us to be: quiet, obedient, afraid. We become the kind of species that lets innocent people die because it is convenient. His voice grew stronger. I will not be that. My colony will not be that. Whatever comes, we stand with the... One by one, other representatives rose to their feet. Not all of them, not even most of them at first, but enough. Colony after colony declared their support. When the vote was called, it was not unanimous, but it was a clear majority. Humanity would not abandon the... President Han sent the response to the Conquered herself. Your ultimatum is rejected. We will not withdraw. We will not surrender our captain, and we will not apologize for saving lives. General, the Conquered military commander, received the message aboard his flagship. He was a like ambassador, but where was cold was cruel. He had crushed rebellions on 12 worlds. He had destroyed entire fleets. He did not fear humans. So they choose war, he said to his officers. Very well. In 48 hours, we will remind them why the elder races rule this galaxy. Aboard the Starboard Hope, Captain stood on the bridge, watching the Conquered fleet mass on long-range sensors. Beside him, Elder Oma watched too. Your people will suffer because of us, she said quietly. I never wanted this. Turned to face her. Elder, your people have suffered for 3,000 years because the galaxy was too afraid to do what was right. Maybe it is time someone else shared the burden. But why? You barely know us. We are strangers. Considered the question carefully. Perhaps that is exactly why. We do not need to know someone to know that cruelty is wrong. We do not need to understand someone to believe they deserve to live. He looked back at the sensors. Maybe that is what being human means. We cannot turn away from suffering, even when it would be easier. Elder Oma was silent for a long time. Then she reached out and took his hand in hers. In 3,000 years, she whispered, we have never met anyone like you. And as the hours counted down toward war, across the darkness of space, a small fleet of human ships prepared to stand against an empire. They were outnumbered and alone. But they were not afraid. No one dared to aid the aliens, except humans. Part 4: The Stand. The 48 hours ended at midnight ship time. Captain Park stood on the bridge of the Starboard Hope, watching the Conquered fleet advance on his sensors. 47 warships against 12 human vessels. The mathematics of death were simple and terrible. Admiral Myra's voice crackled through the communication channel from her flagship, the Unity. All ships take defensive positions. We protect the vessel at all costs. Watched his crew prepare for battle. They were not soldiers. They were explorers, scientists, and engineers. Most of them had never fired a weapon at another ship, but none of them hesitated. None of them asked to leave. Lieutenant looked up from her station. Captain, I have an idea. We have been broadcasting our situation to the galaxy, but only through standard channels. If I can access the Concord's emergency network, I can send a live feed of everything that happens directly to every ship, station, and world in known space. The Concord will try to block it. They will fail. Eyes were determined. I can do this, Captain. Let them see what their empire truly is. Nodded, do it. Specialist worked quickly at her console. She was young, only 26 years old, with steady hands and a brilliant mind. Within minutes, she had broken through the Concord's security systems. A live feed began broadcasting to billions of viewers across the galaxy. "This is the human vessel Starward Hope," she announced. "We are transmitting live from the edge of human space. The Galactic Concord is about to attack a fleet protecting 12,000 refugees. Watch, remember, and judge for yourselves what kind of galaxy you want to live in." General watched the broadcast begin with fury in his eyes. "Block that signal," he commanded. His officers tried. They failed. The humans had done something clever with the transmission, bouncing it through so many relay points that cutting it off was impossible without shutting down the entire communication network. "It does not matter," decided. "Let them watch. Let them see what happens to those who defy the Concord." The first Concord ships entered weapons range. Sergeant O stood in the cargo bay of the Starward Hope, checking his rifle for the third time. He was the leader of the ship's small Marine squad, 20 soldiers trained for boarding actions and security. They had never expected to fight in a real war. Around him, his Marines prepared their equipment in silence. They all knew the Concord might try to board the ship. If that happened, it would be their job to hold them back. The door opened and walked in. The young engineer had not left the ship since the humans had repaired his engines. He had nowhere else to go. "I want to fight," Sid. Looked at him. "This is not your battle." "Is it not? Your people are about to die for mine. I will not hide while you protect us." Straightened his shoulders. "I know how to use a weapon. Let me stand with you." Studied him for a long moment. Then he reached into a locker and pulled out a spare rifle. "Stay close to me. Do exactly what I say." Took the weapon. His hands did not shake. The battle began with fire. Conquered warships opened with their primary weapons, beams of energy that could cut through steel like paper. Admiral's fleet responded with everything they had. The darkness of space lit up with explosions. The human ships were smaller and slower, but they were also more nimble. Admiral had trained her crews well. They danced between the enemy attacks, striking back with precision, targeting engines and weapons systems instead of trying to destroy ships outright. But it was not enough. One by one, human ships began to fall. The destroyer Braveheart took a direct hit to its reactor and exploded in a ball of flame. The frigate New Dawn lost power and drifted helplessly until Conquered Marines boarded it. The cruiser Hope's light managed to destroy 3 enemy vessels before its hull finally gave way. On the bridge of the Starward Hope, Captain watched his people die. "We cannot hold them," Lieutenant reported, her voice strained. "They are breaking through." Gripped the arm of his chair. "Tell all ships to fall back to the vessel. We make our stand there." The surviving human ships retreated, forming a tight ring around the Wanderer's lament. 7 ships remained, 7 against 32. Then something unexpected happened. A new ship appeared on sensors, jumping in from faster-than-light travel. It was an observation vessel, one of the neutral ships that had been watching from afar. Its captain was named, and she had spent her entire career following rules and avoiding trouble. But she had also been watching the broadcast. She had seen the humans fight and die for strangers. She had seen the Concord's cruelty exposed before the entire galaxy. "Vessel," General demanded. "You are in a restricted zone. Leave immediately." Captain's response was calm and clear. "No." Her ship moved to join the human defensive line. Stared in disbelief. "You would throw away your neutrality for humans for—" I would throw away my neutrality for something that matters. And she was not alone. Another ship jumped in, then another, a trading vessel armed with mining lasers, a science ship that had no weapons but refused to leave, a passenger liner full of civilians who simply wanted to witness history. Across the galaxy, beings were watching the broadcast. They saw the humans standing alone against impossible odds. They heard Captain's words echoing through space, and something that had been sleeping for a very long time began to wake. One by one, ships broke away from their routes and set course for the battle. Not many, not enough to change the outcome, but enough to matter. On the starward Hope, conquered Marines finally breached the hull. They stormed through corridors in their black armor, weapons raised, expecting easy victory. They found Sergeant O waiting for them. The fighting was brutal and close. Human Marines fell back step by step, making the conquered pay for every meter. Fought at the front, his rifle never stopping, his voice calling orders through the chaos. Beside him, fired his borrowed weapon with desperate precision. He had never killed before. He discovered that he was good at it. "Fall back to Section 7, shouted, "protect the bridge." They retreated through the ship, leaving bodies behind, both human and conquered. But they did not break. They did not run. On the bridge, Elder Oma approached Captain. Her old face was filled with grief. "Surrender me," she said. "Give me to them. Perhaps they will spare your people." Looked at her, "No. Captain, your people are dying. Your ship is being boarded. This battle is lost." Tears streamed down her silver cheeks. "Please, let me save what I can." Took her hands in his. "Elder, for 3,000 years your people have sacrificed everything. You have hidden and run and suffered alone. Today that ends." He squeezed her hands gently. "Today you are not alone, and we do not surrender our friends." Outside, the battle continued to rage. Human ships burned and died, but they did not retreat. They did not stop fighting. And across the galaxy, more and more beings watched. They saw what courage looked like. They saw what compassion cost. General stood on his bridge, watching his victory unfold. But something bothered him. His fleet was winning, but the galaxy was watching. Every death, every explosion, every act of cruelty was being broadcast to billions. His communication officer spoke urgently. "General, we are receiving messages from conquered member worlds. They are demanding that we stop." "World what?" "The broadcast, sir. People are seeing everything. There are protests on 12 major worlds. The High Council is threatening to withdraw from the conquered. The Trade Federation is." Silence stared at the battle raging outside his window. For the first time in his long career, he felt something he had not felt in centuries. He felt afraid. Not of the humans, not of their pitiful ships or their tiny weapons. He was afraid of what the galaxy was becoming. He was afraid of what the humans had awakened. And in that moment, hesitating over his next command, General realized that the conquered had already lost. Not the battle, not yet. Something much more important. No one dared to aid the aliens, except humans. Part 5: A New Dawn. The order to withdraw came from the conquered High Council itself. General received it in stunned silence, his fingers frozen over the command console. After centuries of unquestioned authority, the elder races had blinked. Across conquered space, the broadcasts had done their work. Billions of beings had watched humans die to protect strangers. They had seen the truth about the quarantine exposed in documents that Dr. Bay had transmitted to every news service in the galaxy. They had witnessed courage that made their own silence feel like shame. On 12 major worlds, protests filled the streets. The government threatened to withdraw from the conquered entirely. The Trade Federation announced that they would no longer enforce Edict 7. Even among the elder races themselves, voices rose demanding to know what other lies had been told in the name of galactic order. The war ended not with a final battle, but with a quiet retreat. Conquered warships turned away one by one, their weapons cooling, their crews uncertain what they had been fighting for. On the bridge of the Starward Hope, Captain Park watched them go. His ship was damaged, its hull breached in 3 places, half its systems failing. Around him, his surviving crew sat in exhausted silence. They had lost friends today. They had almost lost everything. But they had not lost. Lieutenant looked up from her console. "Captain, we are receiving transmissions from across the galaxy, thousands of messages." Her voice cracked. "They are thanking us." Did not respond. He was too tired for words. Elder Oma found him later, sitting alone in the damaged observation deck, staring at the stars. She lowered herself slowly onto the bench beside him, her old bones protesting the movement. "Your admiral is coordinating repairs," she said. "They are sending supply ships. The Federation has offered to escort us to safety." She paused. "In 3,000 years, no one has offered us anything. Today, we cannot count all the offers." Nodded slowly. "Your people lost 4 ships today," Oma continued. 173 humans died to protect us. I do not know how to repay such a debt." "There is no debt." Turned to look at her. "We did not save you to be repaid. We saved you because it was right." Oma studied his face for a long moment. "Yes," she said finally. "I am beginning to understand that. It is strange, you know. For 3,000 years we believed that the galaxy was cold and cruel. We believed that kindness was weakness. Your people have shown us something different." "What is that?" "That kindness is the greatest strength of all." The months that followed changed everything. The Galactic Concord did not collapse, but it cracked. The truth about the quarantine led to investigations that uncovered other secrets, other lies, other species that had been punished for threatening the elder race's power. One by one, these wrongs were exposed. One by one, they began to be corrected. President Han announced the formation of a new alliance, separate from the conquered. She called it the Coalition of Free Peoples, and its founding principle was simple: any species that wanted friendship without conditions was welcome. They were the first to join. They came next, followed by the. Within a year, 18 species had signed the coalition charter. Within 5 years, there were 43. The coalition did not seek to destroy the conquered or rule the galaxy. It simply offered an alternative, a place where compassion mattered more than power, where cooperation meant more than control. And at the heart of it all stood humanity, the young species that had looked at an unjust law and simply said no. The young engineer who had once distrusted every human he met became an ambassador. He worked alongside Lieutenant, translating languages and building bridges between worlds that had never spoken before. Sometimes, late at night, they would talk about the battle and the friends they had lost. They never forgot. Dr. Bay returned to medicine, but he specialized in something new: xenobiology, the study of alien life. He trained a generation of doctors who could treat any species, from any world. When he finally retired, there were hospitals bearing his name on 17 planets. Admiral Myra never fought another battle. She spent the rest of her career teaching young officers a new kind of warfare, the war against ignorance, against cruelty, against the fear that divided species from each other. Her students carried her lessons to the stars. President Han served 2 more terms before stepping down. In her farewell address, she spoke words that would be remembered for centuries. "We did not travel to the stars to conquer them. We came to find our place among them. And we found it not through strength or cunning, but through the simplest truth of all, that every life has value, and every hand reached out in kindness makes the universe a little brighter." 5 years after the battle, Captain Park retired to a small house on the edge of a forest. He had refused every honor and every promotion. He wanted only peace. But one day, a shuttle landed outside his home, and Elder Oma stepped out. She was older now, her silver skin creased with age, but her eyes were bright. "I have something to show you," she said. She took him to a world that had been barren rock 5 years before. Now it was green and alive, covered with forests and fields and cities that gleamed in the sunlight. Walked its streets freely, building lives they had never dared to dream of. And they were not alone. Human children played with children in parks and schools. Human teachers taught beside scholars. Human families lived as neighbors to families. It was a new world, built by two species together. Stood on a hill overlooking the largest city, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and purple. Oma stood beside him, leaning on a cane, her breath slow and peaceful. "Do you know what they call you?" she asked. "Across the stars in every language on every world." Shook his head. "They call you the ones who dared. When no one else would help us, you came. When the entire galaxy turned away, you stood firm. And because you stood, others found their courage." She smiled. "You changed everything, Captain, not with weapons or armies, with kindness." Watched the children playing below. Human and running together, laughing together, their differences meaning nothing to them. "We just did what anyone should have done," he said quietly. Oma reached out and took his hand, her silver fingers warm against his skin. "Yes," she said, "but only humans actually did it." The sun set over the new world, and in the growing darkness, lights began to appear in windows across the city. Families gathering for dinner, friends sharing stories, lives being lived in peace. And in the centuries that followed, whenever a species faced extinction, whenever people stood alone against impossible odds, they would look to the stars and hope. They would hope that somewhere out there, a human ship was listening, that someone would remember the lesson taught by a crew of explorers who had looked at suffering and refused to turn away. They would hope that kindness would come again. And it always did. Because that was who humans were, not the strongest species, not the oldest but the ones who dared to care even when it cost them everything. The ones who reminded the galaxy that no one should ever have to die alone in the dark.